Welcome back to Zane Customs. In this week's episode, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. So this is primarily a sculpting channel, well so far, but I also do a lot of drawing on the side and I love doing it, so I think I'm going to start posting some of those videos. And for any of you who follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I do quite a bit of drawing. I've been doing a challenge called Smogist, where you draw one dragon for every day in August, and I just finished that up, and clearly we're not in August anymore, so I was pretty late on it. But one of those drawings I did was the teacup dragon, which eventually turned into the teacup dragon sculpt that I posted on YouTube last week. So even though they are drawings, they do sometimes affect my sculpts, and I sometimes recreate them, so there's some crossover there. But what I'm drawing this week is a Parshendi, and for any of you who are familiar with Brandon Sanderson, you'll probably know what this is. And for those of you who aren't, Brandon Sanderson is an author. He writes a lot of amazing books, one of them being the Stormlight Archive, which this guy is from. And in the Stormlight Archive, the characters are battling against this race called the Parshendi, and the Parshendi actually grow their own armor out of their own skin, and their armor is carapace, so like a crab or a lobster, any sort of crustacean, that, you know, that orange kind of hard armor they grow. That's what this is. And in the books, these Parshendi actually have many different forms they can take on, and one of them is war form, and this is what that is. When they go off to war, they can take on war form and they grow their own armor. So what I've done is actually looked up some pictures of actual crustaceans just to get a lot of good reference photos, because I know a lot of crabs and lobsters are a lot of different colors. You can actually find some blue ones, and in this picture it looks like there's some kind of greenish gray ones, but I wanted to go for the orange reddish look for his armor on this one, so I just found some photos of lobsters or crabs that had that color scheme going on, and then I'm just going to start painting. And again, for those of you who follow me on Instagram, whenever I do a drawing, I post a little time lapse, and I mentioned this in my last Instagram post, but I was really excited to get done with the Smogist challenge, because I would do those drawings in like 10 minutes, so they weren't very good, and just because I was trying to get one out a day. And one thing I was doing color wise is I would go and color in, do all the shading and all that in just grayscale, so just white, black, gray, that's all I used, and then I would put color on top of that and do like a blending layer type thing, and it looks fine, but it doesn't look as good as it can. So when I was drawing this guy, I had already put a lot more time and effort into the actual drawing side of it, so I wanted the coloring to, to be able to stand up to it. So I decided to just color this guy straight color and not do a black and white underlayer. And the black and white underlayer is nice because if you don't know how colors are going to be affected, you can just color in black and white, so you can get the shading, and then you could add whatever color on top of that. If you want it to look like night or day, you can do a bunch of different things. So it's really cool in that sense, but I think it looks a lot better when you do it just straight color. And one thing I also wanted to mention is I unfortunately had problems with my recording, so it did skip a little bit forward here. Basically all I did was color in his skin, and now I'm going on to his carapace. And another thing is, for those of you who have read the book, you might be thinking this is not correct, because the Parshendi are supposed to have black and white marbled skin, or black, white, and red marbled skin. So I didn't get too into detail about how they were supposed to look. This is just kind of what I would imagine when I would listen to the books. So I know that the different forms will have more carapace and will have certain spikes or crowns or whatever. So I understand that this is probably not correct for war form, but just understand that it was just just a drawing I did and just kind of my initial imagination of these creatures. Now, as far as the coloring process goes, my idea is that the sun is going to be hitting this guy from the left side, so everything on the left is going to be brighter, and that's why I haven't really started coloring the right side of the top of his head, this crown, whatever we want to call it, because it's going to be basically the same but just darker. So I'm just trying to do the light side, then I'll move to the dark side. And one thing I actually did is I would use the ink dropper, and for any of you who don't know what that is, there's a tool called the ink dropper. You can click it, and then you can go click any color on your canvas, and it'll turn your brush to that color. So I actually use the ink dropper to get all my colors from my my lobster reference photos and stuff. So these are like actual colors that the lobster had on there, and then use those. And then once I got comfortable enough with it, then I started just kind of doing my own thing. But that's how I initially started getting these colors. And one thing I was trying to do here is some white highlights, but I didn't end up liking how that looked at all, so I'll erase that in a minute. But that was one thing I struggled with too, because in a lot of these photos, I don't know if it's just because the lobster might have been wet at the time, but some of them had a lot of bright white highlights, like they were really shiny, really glossy, and then some of them didn't. And I honestly could have gone either way with it, but I just couldn't make the white highlights look good on my drawing, so I just decided to go without it. And in the books, these characters live in a place called the Shattered Plains, which is like a desert. Like if you've ever been in the desert and you see how the ground cracks when it had been wet and then all the water dried up and then the dirt kind of cracks. That's basically what the Shattered Plain is. It's like a massive desert. So I didn't necessarily want them to look like they were like ocean creatures or anything. You know, they're still more deserty. But you can see here now I've done the other side and I did it darker, and that's kind of a struggle with this whole drawing, because like I said, if you're doing it black and white, it's obvious. If you want something to be darker, you just add black, or lighter you add white or whatever. But doing it straight color and not doing the black and white underlayer, it was a little bit of a struggle to find the right color, and kind of had to go back and forth, because obviously this is orange, but I can't just take any shade of orange and darken it. You know, you kind of have to play with it and make sure you get the right shades, or else it will look weird. For example, on my app I can actually just take whatever color I'm using, and I have a slider and I can slide it left or right, and it'll go darker or brighter. But like I have a lot of different shades of orange going on here, so like that works mostly. But like if you see all the bumps on that I added on top of his crown there, those are a little bit more of a red orange. So if I had that color chosen and then darkened it, I couldn't use that darker shade for the rest of his carapace, if that makes sense. It's just kind of got to go back and forth, and if something looks off, it'll be obvious. You know, if it doesn't look right, then it's not right, and you got to try a different color. And one other kind of challenge that I set myself is I wanted to be able to have this all be purely color in the end, which basically means when I would do my smogest drawings, I would color them and they'd look okay. But then if I turned off my lines, like my initial drawing layer, then it wouldn't look very good. You know, like, because the drawing layer helps divide certain colors, or divide certain elements of the body or whatever. So I'd always have to leave those on, which they were just quick 10-minute drawings and paint, and I would color them in that 10 minutes too, so they weren't rendered out very well. But that was a challenge I set myself with this one, to be able to turn off the drawing lines and have it stand on its own, just pure colors, and make sure that it looked good and not too weird. So one thing that was really fun doing this is I had never really colored something to this magnitude before. Like I have tried, and I've done some drawings just pure color, no initial sketch or anything, but those never really turned out good. And then again, all my colorings I've done for the past year or so, I had that black and white underlayer to get all the shadows and stuff correct, and those just never look as good. So this one really is probably my best one to date as far as color and all that. And one thing that was really fun about it is finding all the small details that I didn't really think about when I was initially sketching it out. Like, for example, his left shoulder armor here, or our left, I guess it'd be his right. I initially imagined it to just have one piece of carapace that kind of wrapped around his shoulder, and then have some kind of spikes around the shoulder armor, or almost have it jut out to just some sharp points. That was my original idea, but as I was rendering it out, I realized that wasn't working, so I kind of made it look more like it was 3 pieces of armor kind of stacked on top of each other. And I think it just looks a little bit more organic, and I don't know, I just think it looks a lot better, and my previous idea just wasn't working. But that's something that you don't really realize when you do a quick sketch, or at least me. I'll just do a quick sketch, and if it looks fine pencil wise, I'll just leave it. But when you come to coloring, you gotta really render these things out and make sure it looks good, color and sketch. So you might have to change some things. I think it's for the better. I think it looks a lot better having done that than my initial idea of what it was going to be. Another thing that helped make this the color job on this stand apart is I used a lot of different textures. So I'm using a program here called Sketchbook, and it comes with a lot of default tools you can use, like the airbrush, the paintbrush. If any of you have used any drawing software, you'd probably be familiar with it, but there's a lot of other ones, like for his skin, or even across some of his carapace, I had this kind of randomized polka dot texture. So for like on his skin, I would use those dots to try to give the impression of like pores or something, and then on his armor, I tried to use those polka dots for just random surface details, or like on the top of his crown where he's got those little, I don't know even what those little dots that are on the lobster as well. I don't know what you'd call those, but just a lot of different brushes, or like the wispy brush here for his beard. I think that also helped bring this drawing together and make it look a lot better. And the one thing I did as well is the Parshendi will actually weave precious stones or precious jewels into their beard, and in the book, the stones can actually absorb something called Stormlight, which is basically like the magic in the world, and it makes the stones glow. So the Parshendi will weave them into their beard, and then they'll have these glowing jewels inside their beard. So I wanted to add those just because I think it's cool. And for those of you who have seen a lot of my Smogus videos, you know that I really do like adding glowing effects to things. That's another thing I want to mention while we're at it, is I am using a program, or just an app on my iPad called Sketchbook, and I've been using Sketchbook for years now. I have it downloaded on my computer, and this is just the program that I've used for a long time. But there are better ones, even for the iPad. You can get an app called Procreate, and pretty much everyone that I talk to, or you see on Instagram or anything that are drawn on their iPad, most everybody uses Procreate. All those cool super stylized time-lapse drawings you'll see on Instagram, pretty much all of them are Procreate. And I've had a lot of people tell me I need to use Procreate. The thing is, I love Sketchbook, and I've used it for a long time, so I know how it works, and it's super user-friendly. I would like to move to Procreate at some point, but there's just kind of a big learning curve there, and I know hopefully I'll get to it, but I'd have to take the time and learn how everything works. And it's not as user-friendly as Sketchbook, but it does have a lot more abilities, so it'd be a better thing in the long run. And one thing it can do is, and you see in my time-lapse here, the canvas is rotating and twisting and zooming in and zooming out as I need it. You can do that in Procreate, but it'll record it so it looks like your canvas isn't moving, so it's just staying still, and you just see me going all across the canvas drawing. So that would be something that would be nice just for the viewers. But hopefully one day I will move on to Procreate. But just if you were curious about what program I was using, that's what I'm using, the Sketchbook. I also unfortunately lost some of the footage of me rendering out his bottom of his torso and his arms, but it's the same process that you saw for the rest of the video. That's pretty much the finished drawing there. Thank you so much for watching. I super appreciate anybody willing to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of these drawing videos. I got a lot more in the works, so if you like that, let me know. If you prefer the sculpting, let me know that too. I will eventually get back to it. I just needed some more time on some of my sculpts, so I decided to put out some of these drawing videos because I already had them. But yeah, thanks for watching. Check out my Instagram and my Etsy. Those are both at Zing Customs, and I'll see you next week.